All right, as we begin Unit 6, this unit is going to tell us about the rise of American industry, big business, and labor. This will be the second industrial revolution in the United States. We'll start with the causes and foundations of this industrial revolution. First, how did the revolution begin? Uh, the first industrial revolution that we talked about relied heavily on steam power for steamships, factories, things like that, and the beginning of the factory system. The point in time that we're talking about now comes after the Civil War. The Civil War causes this change in industry because it demanded a need for goods to be made quickly and efficiently. Remember, think of the North. That's where the industry is going to be. And in war, what do you need? You need goods to fight the war, weapons, clothing, health supplies, things like that. But you also need food. That means transportation has to increase. So the Civil War really put the pressure on the United States for this second industrial revolution. So we'll see factories ramp up production to meet that demand of food shipping further. The railroads are going to expand. And with all of this happening, with the factories expanding, with production increasing, something that you need is more workers. So we will see at the same time that there will be an increase in immigration to meet that demand for labor. So, what time period are we talking about? This is going to begin in the 1850s, so a little bit before the Civil War, and last us into the turn of the century, 1900, and even into the 1920s. So, we're talking about a long span of time here when we talk about the Second Industrial Revolution. During this industrial revolution, we are going to see a shift of the nation onto steel, oil, and electricity. So, this will be the second industrial revolution starting in the period after the Civil War. One of the main causes of this second industrial revolution is going to be the abundance of natural resources. Okay, so what do I mean by natural resources? First, we had coal mines on the East Coast. Coal is going to be used to fuel the steam locomotives and factories before we see a shift to oil and electricity. Forests, we're going to use those trees to be cut down for lumber. We're going to use that for construction. Rivers are going to be relied heavily on for transportation. We have a vast river network in the United States that makes it easy for us to move goods across the country. Think of the importance of the Mississippi when we were making the Louisiana Purchase. Rivers, very important. Oil. We are going to start by using oil, the kerosene, to light homes around the United States, and then oil, the dependency there, will shift to gasoline when we see the car. Steel. Steel is going to be a new piece of natural resources, what we use to build up the nation quite literally, and it begins with the Bessemer steel process. The Bessemer steel process before the second industrial revolution in the United States had been monumental in Europe, but once that process that's used to purify and mass produce steel to make steel cheaper in the United States. Once it comes here, we see a shift from iron, which was a very expensive, heavy, not used very often material in construction. We see a shift to steel. And this is going to be used in machines, bridges. We're going to be building skyscrapers. An example of what comes out of this time because we see steel being produced quickly, efficiently using the Bessemer steel process will be the Brooklyn Bridge. This is going to be monumental in the change we see in building, because this bridge is designed with steel cables. It's suspended from high towers. It's going to be an important project that is made possible by this production of steel. Without the abundance of these natural resources in the United States, we would not have had the second industrial revolution. In order to have any industrial revolution, you need to have access to natural resources. Very important. Another cause for this industrial revolution is the fact that we had a free enterprise system in the United States. Our economic system is capitalism. We have economic freedom to make our own choices. We have the right to own property, to invest in businesses. Consumers have choices in what they want to purchase, what they want to make. The government interference is very limited. At this time, we're going to refer to that as laissez-faire, hands off. And this allows for businesses to be created and to be run without supervision. The less government restriction you have, the more freedom there is in production to allow for the growth of the economy, the growth of these big businesses. And this idea of free enterprise, hands off, will be huge when it comes to designing and running these big businesses that we study throughout this unit. Something we need to consider is the image you see on the screen there, the relationship between supply, demand, and price. The relationship between demand and price works hand in hand, but the relationship between demand and supply works in the opposite direction. So let's look at the first half of this here. I want you to think of the example of pencils. Okay, the demand for pencils, not very high, okay, especially now that we're in this tech age and we're doing everything on our iPads. So when the demand falls for a product, the supply rises because people aren't buying it, but production is still happening, so the supply grows and grows and grows. Because there is a large supply, people who are creating these pencils are going to want to get them off the shelf. So the way to get people to buy them, lower the price. So when we see demand decrease, price will decrease, supply is also increasing because people aren't buying as much. Now, on the other side of this, I want you to think of sneakers. A very exclusive shoe is coming out. The demand for it is rising. The supply is very small. And because of that, because there's such an exclusivity to the product, the supply being very small and the demand rising, everybody wants it, the time to strike for business is then. Price is going to rise because people want it. You've got to meet the demand and control how many people get it. So when we see demand rise, people want a product, we lower the supply and we increase the price. And this will be important because businesses understand this model of demand, price, and supply, and that's how they get us to buy their product. They know how to manipulate the market, and having that hands-off role of the government allows for that relationship to be manipulated by big business. Another cause of this industrial revolution is the American work ethic. Okay, at this time, people really believed that if they just worked hard enough, they could be the next billionaire. And this rags to riches story really is put out there by a writer named Horatio Alger. He is going to popularize this rags to riches story when he writes a dime novel, which was a very cheap story written in a very simple manner so that everybody could read it, everybody could purchase it. And he tells the story of a boy who, really was faced with all of the hardships in life. His parents left him. He was orphaned. He had to teach himself how to survive and how to, feed himself to grow. And he rises through the ranks of society and becomes wealthy because of his hard work, because of his perseverance. And this story, when it's read by so many people, encourages people to do the same. They want to be the next Rockefeller, Carnegie, Vanderbilt. They want to be the next one who rises through the ranks of not only the societal structure from like lower class to middle class to high class, but in business as well. They want to start at the bottom and work their way to the top. And that drives people to be hungry for a job, to be ready for success. The other push in work ethic comes from Charles Darwin. Now, you guys may have heard of this guy in biology with his finches and the phrase survival of the fittest. Now, how does that apply to big business? Well, in this time, it was referred to as social Darwinism, taking that idea of survival of the fittest and applying it to people, saying that the weak in society will just die off and the strong will grow stronger in power, in wealth. Big businesses embrace this idea of social Darwinism and they use it to fuel the battle between social classes, the rich and the poor, saying everybody can be rich if they just work hard enough, and the poor have to help themselves. This idea of social Darwinism also tells the government to back off, saying poor people are poor because they want to be poor. Rich people are rich because they worked hard. They are the most fit in society. It also gives off this picture in the United States that if we want the best society possible, well, then we want everybody who is a hard worker to survive, to be in the higher classes. And we hope that the people who don't work as hard, that are quote unquote the poor class, the lower social class, would just die off. If we want the strong American picture of all of us being the best, then we don't want the poor. We only want the rich. So the government shouldn't help them if they can't help themselves. So again, you want to survive, survival of the fittest. So it pushes people to work hard so that they don't fall into that class of they're the weak, they're just, the poor. They want to be the rich, they want to be at that high standing in society. Another cause of the Industrial Revolution is going to be transportation. We are going to have the steam engine lead to the steam locomotive, the train, allowing for goods to be transported long distances. This being able to transport your goods further faster allows for business to grow. The same thing with roads. We have roads being constructed that tie the nation together. People can travel. If people are traveling, then products need to travel to them. So growing the nation grows big business. We have canals. Remember, the Erie Canal, huge, connecting the state of New York, allowing not only small farmers to move their product to the cities, but the cities to move their product to the less populated areas. The railroads, again, are going to connect the United States from coast to coast. Remember, we have that transcontinental railroad. The more railroads we have, the cheaper we can make shipping costs, and that allows for industry to expand. If it's easy, if it's cheap to ship your product, then you would want to make more of it and ship it to the entire nation. So the more railroads we see being constructed, the cheaper the shipping costs get, the more people want to produce and move their product further. The last cause that we're going to talk about for the Industrial Revolution, or rather the results here, are going to be what happens to the economy, how much it grows. We are going to see new standards of living come out of this second industrial revolution. When I say new standards of living, I mean we are creating new products that people are going to use in their everyday life to make their lives easier. Okay, and because these products are out there, think about your cell phone. Everybody has one now. You can't live in society without a phone, at least not successfully. Okay, everybody has one in some way, shape, or form. That's going to be the products that are coming out of this time. People can't live without them. And that means that it becomes more expensive to just be a person in an age where more products are being produced. Another result that we're going to see is the population is going to grow. We are going to have people moving into the cities in large numbers, and that includes people within the United States and outside of the United States moving to the cities for that opportunity for those jobs. Industrialization. We are going to see industry grow throughout the United States, entering us into this new age. And this is going to benefit owners more than the workers. We're going to have the class of the working poor come out of this time as well. And a final result of this economic growth are what we call political machines. This is where the phrase more money, more problems comes into play. When we see more money being put into the economy, it allows for more problems as far as corruption to occur. When people get wealthy, they want to stay wealthy and they need the government to cooperate. So, for that to happen, you'll see wealthy paying off the government, which led to corruption throughout the cities. They're going to bribe city officials for land contracts, for business contracts, and the government will just follow along because they like the wealth that is being produced. If their city is producing the most wealth, then they are looked at as the best in government. So the government and big business really works hand in hand. The most famous example of a political machine will be Tammany Hall, ran by Boss Tweed. And we'll get into this a little bit more in an activity that we do together. But a political machine is one that is greased by the hands of the wealthy in the government to work hand in hand with business to allow business to succeed at any and all costs. And as we look at the industrial changes that occur in this time period between 1850, 1860, 1890, 1900, the government is going to support big business. And one way that they support them is by issuing patents. A patent is a license that's given to the inventor to give them exclusive rights to make, sell, and use the blueprints, their ideas, to sell an invention. During this time period, 1860 to 1890, 500,000 patents are going to be issued, which means that we have 500,000 new inventions being made. That is a ton of new investments or new inventions in just a 30-year time span. That is huge. These inventions are going to increase productivity of people in their day-to-day lives as well as in production within business. We're going to see power stations coming up across the country providing electricity in the early 1900s. This is huge because now people never have to stop working. Work doesn't stop when the sun sets. People can keep inventing. They never have to stop thinking, which can be good or bad, whichever you prefer. By 1900, there's also going to be 1.5 million telephones in use all over the country, which is just another way that we are connected from coast to coast through communication now as well. Next time we meet, we will talk about the different business structures during this time, the second industrial revolution.